policy. For over 20 years, I've dedicated my life to advancing clean energy solutions to the climate crisis and to helping build a more sustainable and equitable economy that works better for working class families like the one I grew up in. I believe that politics matters because policy matters, and that policy matters because people matter. I am a member of the Vermont Climate Council and co-author of Vermont's Climate Action Plan. I also served as Vermont Economic Development Director. For more information, I hope you'll visit jaredduvalvt.com. That's JaredDuvalVT.com. Thank you, and I hope to earn one of your up to 3 votes in the Democratic primary on or before August 9th. I'm Jared Duval, and I approve this ad, paid for by Duval for State Senate.
The Brady Farkas Show is produced and funded by WDEV and the Radio Vermont Group. We welcome listener feedback. Email your comments to wdev@radiovermont.com.
The teams you care about.
Mac Jones is good. That's not the question. The question is he good enough to win repeatedly in this loaded AFC?
The stories that matter to you.
If I'm Xander Bogaerts, I need 3 things in order to get over that insulting contract offer.
This is your home for New England sports.
Jason Tatum, superstar. Book it.
This is the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
What's up, everybody? Brady Farkas Show back at it on a full Thursday. WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. All 90 minutes right up until 7 o'clock. That it's Red Sox baseball, Sox and Royals in the first 4 from Kauffman Stadium. Eric Hosmer in the lineup for the first time as a member of the Red Sox. Sox enter this one 3 games back in the wild card standings, chasing several teams. We'll talk about the Red Sox. We'll talk with Buster Olney of ESPN, who will join us at 5:45. I think Buster's in Vermont. I don't know why I think that, but I think Buster is in Vermont right now. We're going to do a little investigative journalism. We'll talk with Buster at about 5:45. We'll get his spin on the trade deadline for the Sox. He was pretty harsh on the Red Sox. I was harsh on them, too. Buster was also harsh on them. We'll see if he still feels that way 48 hours removed. And maybe the hero of Patriots camp. We'll talk about him as well. So you can get in, as always, on the Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line, 802-585-3026. That's your locally owned Napa stores in Waterbury and Morrisville. So let's waste no time, everybody, and let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
The opening thoughts on the Brady Farkas Show brought to you by Sticks and Stuff and by Swanton Lumber, Vermont's most complete locally owned home center with locations in Enosburg, Derby, Middlesex, St. Albans, and at Swanton Lumber. They're online at sticksandstuff.com. Red Sox make a flurry of roster moves today. They are bringing up Eric Hosmer. They're activating him. He'll be in the lineup. Matt Barnes is back, reinstated from the 60-day injured list. Darwinzon Hernandez, the hard-throwing lefty, he is back. Going away, Caleb Ort goes to the minor leagues. Brian Bayo goes to the injured list. And Jackie Bradley Jr. got released today in what was a bit of a surprising move to me. Now, at first, the Red Sox designated Bradley for assignment, which basically means that they might trade him or they might release him. And then a few hours later, they just eventually outright released him. Before we get into questions about what it all means, before we get into comments about what it all means, and we will do all that, I promise. We're going to talk about JBJ at about 6:30 from the Red Sox point of view for this year. But before we get into all of that later, I just want to say this. I want to start here. If you are a Red Sox fan, which a lot of you listeners are, I hope today you are appreciating all that Jackie Bradley Jr. has done for the Red Sox and all that he has meant to them and all that he has contributed to their success over the last several years. The time is coming. Again, we'll do it at 6:30. The time is coming to talk about the move for this team and where Jackie is in his career right now. And if at that point you want to say good riddance, then fine. We can do that at 6:30. But at least at the start of the show, let's acknowledge all that JBJ has done as a member of the Boston Red Sox. Simply put, Jackie Bradley Jr. is the greatest defensive center fielder for this team in my lifetime. I don't go back far enough to watch Fred Lynn. I don't go back far enough to watch Dwight Evans or anyone else you think was a great outfielder. But JBJ was the best defensive center fielder for the Red Sox of my lifetime. And frankly, I also believe he is the best defensive outfielder of my lifetime that the Red Sox have had. We're talking 30 plus years now. I mean, I'm young, but I'm not that young. Okay, I'm 32 years old. And JBJ is the best defensive outfielder that I think the Red Sox have had in my lifetime. He stands out a cut above the rest. Mookie Betts was excellent, obviously. I'm sure Jacoby Ellsbury had some moments. But by and large, I can't remember most outfielders for the Red Sox being known for their defense. I remember J.D. Drew had an arm, but I couldn't tell you much about Trot Nixon or Daniel Nava or Troy O'Leary. I can't remember a lot of those guys because their defense didn't jump off the page. Jackie Bradley Jr.'s defense jumps off the page. Covered a ton of ground, made great reads off the bat, tracked down balls in the gap well, tracked down balls at the wall also. JBJ covered a ton of ground. Again, and it's all about the reads, right? Playing outfield is all about getting reads and taking angles, and JBJ was great at it. Is great at it. He's been great at it for the Red Sox, right? You see him get a great read, get a jump off the bat, and track it down in the left center field gap and run it down. Ball goes, when he's playing right field, ball goes to the corner. He tracks it down perfectly, fires a strike into second base. And then you see him do things like this.
Fly left center deep. Jackie Bradley racing back all the way to the wall, leaping up, and Jackie Bradley! Oh, he made the play! He caught it! It was gone! But he caught it! Climbing the wall with a brilliant play!
Spectacular play!
Jackie Bradley Sr. here to see it. This is magnificent.
Game-saving, spectacular play by Bradley Jr.
That was a 2019 game against the Orioles in extra innings. Like, Trey Mancini was at the plate. That was a walk-off home run. That was in the bottom of the 11th inning. That was about to be a walk-off home run for the Orioles. And I remember that game perfectly. Ryan Brazier was pitching at that moment. Chris Sale had shoved and had like 10 or 12 strikeouts, got no run support. It was 1-1. That was a 1-1 game in the bottom of the 11th. Brazier's pitching. The game is about to be over. And Jackie Bradley Jr. took that home run away. So if you want to dance on Jackie Bradley Jr.'s baseball grave, we can do that at 6:30. There will be a time for talking about JBJ, the player, and what he is now. But I want to start the show at least with giving JBJ his props for the Red Sox that he was. I mean, that is, to me, like, he is the best center fielder this team's had in my lifetime. He's the best outfielder this team had in my lifetime. And he anchored the best outfield defense in the league a couple of years ago. Andrew Benintendi, Mookie Betts, and JBJ were the best defensive outfield in the league, and JBJ anchored the whole thing. He anchored the whole thing. And I want him to be remembered for that today. And also, we all know JBJ is a streaky hitter. That's how he's always been defined, right? He's only a career 236 hitter with the Red Sox. He's had far more downs than ups in his career with the bat. But don't ever forget, in addition to his great glove, don't ever forget what he did in the 2018 Sox World Series run. Jackie Bradley Jr., I don't know that people remember this. Jackie Bradley Jr. was the MVP of the 2018 ALCS. And it wasn't for what he did with the glove. It was for what he did with the bat.
Swinging a high drive to right field. Reddick going back to the warning track. This ball is going, and it is gone. A grand slam for Jackie Bradley Jr. And the Red Sox have broken it open. They lead it 8-2. Can you believe it?
Yes, I can. That was a great call, by the way, by Joe. That was in Game 3 of the ALCS in 2018. That series was tied 1-1. That may have been the biggest hit of that series. That may have been the biggest hit of that series, and Jackie Bradley Jr. got it. And from there, the Red Sox go on, and they roll. I mean, in the ALCS, he was MVP of that, He had 2 homers. He had 9 RBIs. He was .400 on base percentage. Like, he's always going to be remembered for the glove. But don't forget what his bat did in that series. That Astros team had Verlander, Garrett Cole, Dallas Keuchel, who was coming not too far removed from a Cy Young, and Charlie Morton. And the Red Sox smoked them in large part because of what JBJ did with the bat. Jackie Bradley Jr. is not a very good player today. He is not a complete enough player today, rather, to start for a contending team. I get why this move was made, but do not forget what Jackie Bradley Jr. has meant to the Red Sox. Best defensive center fielder, at least of my lifetime, best outfielder of my lifetime, the best outfielder on a team, on the best outfield defensive team a couple of years ago, and he did it at the bat in at least one huge series that helped the Red Sox win a World Series. And finally, Jackie Bradley Jr., don't underestimate this. Jackie Bradley Jr. is a homegrown player. I am a sucker for homegrown players. You know this. They mean more. They just do. Homegrown players mean more. John Lester will always mean more than Chris Sale. Dustin Pedroia will always mean more than Trevor Story. Devers and Bogarts and Betts. That's why we're all worked up about if they were to leave. Homegrown players mean more. JBJ was drafted by the Red Sox. He was developed by the Red Sox. He spent parts of 9 years with the Red Sox, and he won a title here. And those guys just mean more. No matter how you feel about Jackie Bradley Jr. today, remember all of what we've talked about in the first 10 minutes. Homegrown player, World Series champion, Gold Glover, 2018 ALCS MVP. Be grateful for all that he provided in his Red Sox tenure. Because his Red Sox tenure is over. I have to imagine that he won't ever be back in a Red Sox uniform. Be grateful for all that he did, for all we got to see, for all that he helped, and for all that we got to witness. Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text lines open. 802-585-3026. Let's see here. Couldn't agree. He was a hell of a defensive asset. Brady, also, the texter also says, Brady, I'm a little slow on the text line. I'm feeling like an old man. I'm pushing 60. By the way, I listened to you for many years. Congrats on going to DEV. Well, thank you very much. I love being here and always appreciate listeners coming over. Appreciate old listeners, appreciate new listeners, and appreciate you checking us out today. Dane in Rochester says absolutely about JBJ being great for the Red Sox. What the hell is going on? Well, what's going on is that the Red Sox have chosen to go with Jarren Duran over Jackie Bradley Jr. And I think it is the right call. Again, we will talk about that at 6:30. There are a lot of baseball angles to this move in a couple of different ways. It's actually very interesting, all the tentacles to this story. But I wanted to make sure that we gave Jackie Bradley Jr. his flowers before we talked about him in the past tense with the Red Sox. Fred in Fayston says, why did they have to get rid of him? Who was the corresponding roster move? Fred, you must have joined us a little late. That's okay. Eric Hosmer's joining the team today in Kansas City. So they needed a roster spot for Hosmer, and that's kind of where we're at, right? Bello goes on the injured list, so they replace him with a pitcher. That's Darwinson Hernandez. Ort goes down to AAA. They replace him with a pitcher. That's Matt Barnes. Hosmer's going to join the team. They decide to get rid of Jackie Bradley Jr. today to make room for Hosmer. I get it. We don't have to, we could feel bad for Jackie while also getting it from a baseball sense. And that's where I'm at. We'll talk about this whole thing with Buster Olney. Buster Olney was very, very hard on the Red Sox the other day at the trade deadline and after the trade deadline. He was harder on them, I think, than I was. Has he softened his stance at all 48 hours removed? Buster Olney from ESPN. He's with us next. And is he in Vermont? I think he is.
Red cedar and hemlock clapboards are available at Cleveland Cedar Products in Woken. They have many hard-to-find siding products. Don't let fall weather slow your siding project. Let Cleveland Cedar Products help with free-staining. Their quality is unmatched and their prices are the best anywhere. Log on to cedarguide.com and let Henry and his family provide their best products and 40 years of siding experience. Cleveland Cedar Products, Route 15, just 3 miles west of Wolcott Village.
Need an appliance? Shop the new appliance truckload event at Lowe's, going on now. From refrigerators and ranges to dishwashers and laundry pairs, we have a large selection of appliances from the brands you trust. Plus, get store-wide savings by shopping other in-stock categories. Go to your local Lowe's store or visit Lowes.com to shop the appliance truckload event and find what you need now. While supplies last, valid through 8/17.
Have you ever noticed that when the afternoon light hits your floors, you can see everything, including dust?
So much dust.
And that floor dust gets kicked up into the air, compromising the quality of air you and your family breathe.
Eesh.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper is the fast and easy way to clean your floors with ultra-thick pads that trap and lock dust before it gets in the air. Just a couple minutes a day.
And dust is gone.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper. Proud partner of the American Lung Association.
The world is a constantly changing place, and being informed has never been more important. This is Steve Kathan. WDEV, Vermont's news station, and CBS provide you with up-to-the-minute news and information. Whether it's top and bottom of the hour news, breaking news, or special events, if Vermonters need to know, you can trust that WDEV and CBS will inform you. WDEV, keeping an eye on Vermont, while CBS keeps an eye on the world.
You want to feel important. You want to be a part of something bigger, something that matters and can help change things. You want to feel like you belong. We know. We felt that way too. And that's why we did something about it. We aren't just Army National Guard soldiers. We are normal people just like you. And together, we can make a difference. Take on your legacy. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Sponsored by the Vermont Army National Guard. Aired by the Vermont Association of Broadcasters and this station.
All the insight into everything going on in baseball. It's time for our weekly conversation with ESPN Baseball Insider and Vermont native, Buster Olney.
I'm just about ready to bet the family farm in Vermont.
On the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Welcome back in, Brady Farkas Show, right here on WDEV, AM and FM, WDEVradio.com. Full show today, all 90 minutes, going up until 7 o'clock. Red Sox baseball begins at 7:10. First pitch, 8:10. Sox in Kansas City against the now depleted Royals. And joining us now is our ESPN MLB insider, Buster Olney. Buster, am I correct? Are you in Vermont right now?
I am in Vermont. I'm in Addison County as we speak.
Well, good.
Very excited about that. How are you?
I am well. Any big plans while you're in the Green Mountain State?
Just a lot of paperwork, actually, and then, getting ready. I'm going to be walking a lot of dogs, I think, at the local park, and then getting ready for a vacation to Lake George. It's to be a lot of fun.
Oh, well, good for you. I'm from the Albany area, so I've been to Lake George many times. Hope that you enjoy it. Before we get into the Red Sox trade deadline and your thoughts on it, which were pretty strong, let me ask you about yesterday's Red Sox-Astros game. Yordan Alvarez was given 4 strikes against Rich Hill in the 3rd inning, and nobody caught it. How is that possible? You've seen this video, right?
Knowing all of the folks involved, if you ever have a conversation with Rich Hill, he is a hyperactive. He has a hyperactive mind. He's on top of everything. And then of course you have all the umpires there. 4 umpires, not one of them caught it. And then I've known Alex Cora forever, and he is as bright a baseball mind as I've ever seen. And if I've done sideline reporting in Red Sox games, and you hear him, he's on every pitch. Where he is just reacting to everything. His coaches are the same way. So you think about all the people involved who had an opportunity to recognize that there were 4 strikes and they didn't do it. It really is incredible.
I mean, we're lucky that Alvarez just ended up grounding out instead of something happened that actually affected the game. What would have happened if that play had affected an outcome?
Well, I don't think there's anything they could have done about it. I think once the next pitch is thrown, that's it. Now, I haven't gone and formally asked somebody who knows the rules better than I do if that's actually the case. But that's my understanding is that typically it's kind of like, you and I will always remember the game that Armando Galarraga threw where he should have had a perfect game. But Jim Joyce, the first base umpire, blew a call. And so many people have gone back and said, boy, you should have just, once Jim Joyce acknowledged that he'd blown the call, we should go back and we should change the result. You can't do that. Because once you start pulling on that thread and setting precedent, can you imagine other situations that you're going to create for yourself? So I think everyone would have lived with it, and then somebody would have shown Rich Hill the video, and knowing his personality, would have gone and kicked a chair.
Hey, let's talk about the trade deadline and what the Red Sox did or what the Red Sox didn't do. Here's how I saw it, and I said this at the time. I didn't like the Red Sox trade deadline because they didn't buy enough to be buyers. They didn't sell enough to be sellers. I thought they got better in some spots and worse in others, and I don't quite know exactly what the direction is right now. You had some pretty harsh words on the Red Sox deadline. How do you feel now 48 hours removed?
Yeah, and you summed it up better than I did. In the way that you just described it, I think you're exactly right. I think you either got to go, hard one way or hard another. And the idea that you're going to thread a needle if you're a big market team, that doesn't make sense to me. Like if you're the Oakland Athletics, you're the Tampa Bay Rays, and you're constantly managing payroll, okay, you could see a case where they, take some resources and make a deal and then reallocate those to fill another need. If you're the Boston Red Sox, the idea that, you're going to, wake up on a Tuesday and have an opportunity to get Eric Hosmer, with the Padres basically eating all of his money. Think about that.
Yeah.
And then it begs the question, okay, then why did you give away your catcher the day before? Or give away is too strong, but okay, you upgraded your defensive first base, but you didn't get better overall because you gave away your all-star catcher. It doesn't make sense. And I tell you this, it absolutely jumped out at me when we were doing the broadcast on Monday. We had the Red Sox against the Astros in Houston. The confusion, the uncertainty, frustration, anger, however you want to describe it, among the players, folks in the clubhouse, was as strong as I've ever seen it with any team. They were really upset, and it was reflected in what Xander Bogaerts said the next day, where even after they get, Hosmer, and even after they make other moves, he's still questioning exactly what the direction is.
I have given Chaim Bloom a pass for a lot of things, and I've rationalized a lot of moves, and I've defended Chaim Bloom a lot in the last 3 years because I just didn't think that the team was, that the team was ready, unquote there. You asked the question yesterday, I believe, on ESPN radio when you said, when are the Red Sox going to start to act like a big market team again? And I said this offseason for me is where the rubber meets the road. The Red Sox are going to have at least $60 million free. And if Xander Bogaerts leaves, $80 million free to go and do a bunch of things this offseason. This is the offseason I think the Red Sox need to get back into the arms race. Do you think that is where the pressure really ramps up on Chaim Bloom?
I think it already is ramping up big time. The reaction from the media, I'm only around the Red Sox a handful of days every year. You're seeing, the beat writers really tapping into that frustration. If I were close friends with Chaim, who is a terrific guy, he's great to talk with. I've told you before, the perception of him in other front offices, they think he's really a great guy. They think he's really smart. What I would say to Chaim Bloom, if he were a friend, would be, you need to build these bridges because they are not in existence based on what the feedback that I'm getting is. From players, from folks in your organization. The perception of Chaim is that he's really isolated, that he's not necessarily widely inclusive. And I'm not in the front office to know if that's true, but that's the perception of him. That's a simple, hard fact. Here's the other thing, too. I'm starting to think about this. John Henry's ownership of the Red Sox has been phenomenal. 4 championships, the renovation of Fenway Park, the ending of the long streak of years without winning a championship. And if John Henry were a close friend, I'd say to him, do you have the passion that you once did to be owner of this team? Are you willing to pay, players the market value? And lately the answer's been no, given Mookie Betts, given Xander Bogaerts. And if the answer from John Henry is no, if I had that conversation as a friend of his, then I would say, you know what? It might be time for you to start thinking about selling the team. Does all of your other interests, your interest in Liverpool and the Penguins, et cetera, all of that is either distracting you or making you less aggressive as a baseball owner and having lower demands? Then maybe it's time to start thinking. And by the way, there'd be no shame in that. He has been a phenomenal owner, but it just feels like right now that they're just not acting like a big market team should.
Buster Olney of ESPN with us here on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. You mentioned Chaim Bloom building those bridges. Well, Chaim Bloom went to Houston. He's going to travel with the team to Kansas City, allegedly to be there with the players to answer questions or talk about processes with them. Is that something that is typical? Is that a good idea because it shows him building bridges? Or is it a sign that things are so bad that he has to make house calls?
Yeah, it's long overdue. Again, I'm not around the team every day, but I can say flat out the perception is that Chaim he does not have a comfortable relationship in the way, for example, back in the day, Pat Gillick did with players, or Theo Epstein. And it's not to say that they have to be friends with the players. It doesn't mean that you're hanging out and drinking wine every night, but there has to be a better relationship so that when stuff happens, the reaction isn't what we saw from the Red Sox players the other day, which was, what's going on? And look, you saw on television that big moment when Christian Vasquez was asked by reporters about the trade that had just been made, and he had that glassy-eyed look, and he was pulled away from reporters. The person who pulled him away was the Red Sox translator, because there was not a member of the front office who was there. Chaim was not there. One of his chief lieutenants was not there. That's a bad situation. And maybe, Chaim, with the feedback that he got, figured that out. That needs to get better.
Jackie Bradley Jr. designated for assignment today. Look, I always thought Jackie Bradley Jr. should have been a fourth outfielder. I think he played far too much for this team. That said, I am surprised that this happened, especially on the heels of the Vasquez trade. How do you think this move lands in the clubhouse?
Well, first off, full disclosure, 2 years ago when he was a free agent, I ripped the Red Sox for not signing him aggressively because he'd been a good player. Clearly, I was wrong with that opinion. So, they went out. He plays 1 year with the Brewers, doesn't hit very well. They trade him for Hunter Renfroe, which is looking more and more like that was a bad deal that they did. I think it's going to land fine in the clubhouse because the fact is Jackie hasn't hit. I mean, it's a competitive business, and the fact is he's just not close to what he was offensively in 2018.
Let's get you out of here on two questions, one fun and one somber. We'll start with the somber one first. I am curious about your either memories or maybe meetings with Vin Scully.
So, as you know, I grew up a huge Dodger fan in Randolph Center.
Yeah.
We didn't have a television, and so I never saw him do games on television while I was growing up. And the first time I heard him was actually on an LP following the championship seasons in 1981. His voice was like a voice of a baseball god, which is why I was afraid of him. Like, I didn't approach him as a reporter. I steered around him, and I'm not starstruck by players, but I was starstruck by Ned Martin, who I listened to at WDEV, and I was totally starstruck. Never after broadcasting when it came out on my podcast and he spoke to me like it was here, which was totally. Like, he is peerless. He's the greatest of all time.
Bus, I'll get you out of here on a more fun one. Green Mountain League Men's League playoffs coming up this weekend. I've got the ball in either game 1 or 2 against the Vermont Black Sox. Be honest with you, I've had a pretty good year. I've had a pretty good run in men's leagues for the last decade, but last regular season game, hardest I've been hit in probably 8 years. Think I gave up 7 earned runs in 4 innings. It was ugly, too many fastballs, too much of the plate. You got any good tips about guys who have gotten hammered and then come back and given a good playoff effort here? I need some confidence boosts.
Yeah, first off, you got to have a short memory. You also need to work faster, and you need to throw your changeup more.
There you go. I think that's going to be what it's going to pitch. I'm going to have to pitch backwards against these guys, Buster. A lot of first pitch sliders. Hopefully they're not listening to the strategy.
Well, and it sounds like you don't have much of a changeup the way you're describing your stuff. But if your fastball got hit, you got to throw the changeup more.
I think my fastball was acting like a changeup, and that was the problem. So my changeup might, if my changeup's at 59 and my fastball's at 72, we'll have a good separation there. Hey, Buster, real quick, Red Sox, they're hovering around the race. Do you buy that they're really in it, or there are too many teams to catch and their schedule is too tough?
No, they're absolutely in it. Do I think they're going to make it at this point? No, because I think the Mariners are for real. I think the Blue Jays are a better team. And I think the Rays are a better team. But I would say this. They're not chasing immortals when you're talking about the Rays with all the injuries they've had. But if you can't keep up, if you're the Boston Red Sox, you got a payroll basically 4 times the size of the Rays. Goodness. That's all I'm going to say.
Buster Olney just told me the Mariners are for real, so I can have a good Thursday the rest of the night, no matter what happens to the Red Sox and Royals tonight. So, Buster, thank you. Enjoy Vermont, and we'll talk in 7 days. Although you're going to be on vacation. Are we talking in 7 days?
Yes, in 7 days we will be talking. The week after that, we'll have a conversation about that going up.
All right, that sounds good to me. Let Buster Olney go. We took it right down to the wire. A ton of great stuff with Buster as always. Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line is open. I want to wrap up a little bit of what we heard about with Buster. And I said I don't talk a lot of national sports. There's one national story that needs our attention. That's coming up next on DEV.
96.1 WDEV FM Warren, 96.5 W243 AT Berry, 98.3 W252 CU Montpelier, AM 550 WDEV Waterbury.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Liberty Mutual Insurance.
I'm Linda Kenyon in Washington. Alex Jones learns his punishment.
The right-wing talk show host Alex Jones is going to have to pay the parents of the Sandy Hook shooting victim about $4 million in damages. That is according to a jury decision. It comes at the end of a dramatic case that showcased, the harm that comes by viral conspiracy theories.
CBS's Janet Shamley, and this is the first time the InfoWars host has been held financially liable for repeatedly claiming the 2012 elementary school shooting was a hoax. Monkeypox declared a national health emergency.
With the number of cases rising, the U.S. made the emergency declaration. Last week, the World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global emergency. CBS's Dr. David Aga says right now the virus is being seen mostly in gay men.
Presently, there are about 6,600 cases of monkeypox in the United States. Close to 99% are in men who have sex with men, and it is spreading dramatically in that population.
The emergency declaration will make it easier to use federal funds to fight monkeypox. Steve Futterman, CBS News.
WNBA star Brittany Griner sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison on drug charges.
Very upset, very stressed, and she can hardly talk.
That's Griner's Russian attorney. CBS News reporter Maria Lushnia has more on a possible prisoner swap.
The Kremlin so far has given a muted response. They've acknowledged that some conversations about a prisoner swap are happening, but they're not confirming that they're anywhere close to reaching a deal. And they're also saying that the United States, using sort of public pressure to speed this process up, will not help and will not be beneficial to Griner or Whelan.
The USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier group will remain near Taiwan. That's Washington's reaction to China's missile launches and war games following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby says a planned ICBM missile test from the U.S. mainland has been put off so as not to escalate tensions.
The temperature's pretty high, and the president believed and the national security team believed that a strong, confident, capable nuclear power can afford to wait.
The U.S. Justice Department has charged 4 Louisville, Kentucky police officers with civil rights violations in the killing of Breonna Taylor. Her family says it's about time.
What we've been singing, and the rest of them back there, what we've been singing on day one, y'all learning what we've been singing was the truth, that they shouldn't have been there and that Breonna didn't deserve that.
This is CBS News.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance, so you only pay for what you need. Visit libertymutual.com to learn more.
Do you know what people see when they Google you? Search engines don't always get it right. And when they're wrong, it's your reputation on the line. So what do you do when you don't agree with your search results? Call Reputation Defender at 800-401-6681. Reputation Defender is one of the most trusted names in online reputation repair. We have over a decade of experience in fixing people's search results, and we can help you too. Using cutting-edge approaches, Reputation Defender pushes unflattering information down to lower pages of your search results, where few people ever look. We also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, letting you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. You owe it to yourself to take control with Reputation Defender. Visit www.reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 for free advice on your situation. That's 800-401-6681.
An old country store chain's getting some blowback over a new meatless offering.
Here at the Cracker Barrel, home-style food and great value go hand in hand.
Hundreds of fans have been complaining on social media after Cracker Barrel announced it was adding Impossible sausage to that home-style menu. One accuses the Tennessee company of going woke. Another urges an end to the plant-based blankety-blank. A supporter questions the criticism when, quote, some of y'all are working on your third Cracker Barrel heart attacks. An animal lover writes vegans appreciate the cruelty-free food. Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News.
Several people in West Virginia have developed flu-like symptoms after working closely with pigs. Turns out it's the swine flu. The illnesses occurred after a county fair. Symptoms usually show up 1 to 3 days after exposure to infected livestock. Lindy Kenyon, CBS News.
Your chance to be part of the show is on the text line at 802-585-3026.
Now it's back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Welcome back in. Brady Farkas Show right here on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. One other piece of Red Sox roster news today. Michael Wacha starting tonight for the Woo Sox. He's expected to go 4 innings. His last Major League appearance was June 28th. Remember, he's got a 2.69 ERA, so getting him back will be a big boon to this Red Sox pitching staff. Buster is just absolutely the best. Love having Buster on. We'll talk some about his Jackie Bradley Jr. thoughts again at 6:30. We'll talk more about Jackie Bradley Jr. being designated for assignment and then ultimately released when we, again, 6:30 for that. Buster also had some really interesting stuff and some really strong stuff on Chaim Bloom and how he is perceived by players and on his relationship with players. We're going to do that topic tomorrow because it's really expansive, I think. And I want to get really into that tomorrow. So probably save that for tomorrow. But the Buster interview, I'm told, is already up on our podcast channel. Great job by the team on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Again, the Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line is open, 802-585-3026. You can download our podcast every day, by the way, for free on Apple and on Spotify. I want to get to a serious topic. And we talked the other day, ironically, about how I don't really talk a lot of national storylines. I always try to make, if there is a national story, I always try to localize it or regionalize it. This one, we can't do that with, but it's big enough that I want to give it some time here. We have to talk about a few aspects of the Deshaun Watson story here. We haven't talked a lot about this. Again, because it doesn't really affect our sports scene. That's always the tunnel I've tried to live through, but we do have to get to it here. Here's what we're at right now, right? You know that over the last year, Deshaun Watson has been accused of sexual assault / sexual misconduct by more than 20 different masseuses, right? Masseuses, is masseuse, is that the right word? Massagers, masseuses, I think. So someone can correct me on that, but that's by far the least most important part of this story. He's been accused of sexual misconduct by more than 20 people who give massages over the last year. And the NFL, after a really long time and a long investigation, there has been a 6-game suspension given to Deshaun Watson. Here is how the disciplinary process works, right? It used to be that the NFL was judge, jury, and executioner, right? The NFL would run point on the investigation, and Roger Goodell would levy the punishment himself. And Roger Goodell caught a lot of grief when he levied punishment. Sometimes he was not harsh enough. Sometimes he was too harsh. So now Roger Goodell and the NFL developed a new system where the punishments would be given out by an independent judge. In this case, her name was Sue Robinson. So Sue Robinson gave Deshaun Watson 6 games. Well, now, under this new agreement, while Roger Goodell did not give the punishment, while the NFL did not give the punishment, they do retain the right to appeal the punishment, or if he really wanted to, just flat out override the punishment and then give the punishment himself. So he doesn't have to give it at the beginning, but he could take it over and give it at the end. The NFL has said they are going to appeal the 6-game suspension. They want Deshaun Watson to get more. Roger Goodell is said to want him to get at least 1 full season, but Roger Goodell is not going to make the decision himself. He is appealing. There is a judge out of New Jersey that is going to hear his appeal, and then at that point, the league will win or the league will lose. So we'll see what happens, right? Watson could stay with the 6 games, or it could go to the year that Goodell wants, or anywhere in between. So that is what we know right now, okay? That is what we know. Watson gets the 6 games. NFL's appealing. Judge in New Jersey is going to hear the appeal. I have a few thoughts on this story that I have to get to. Right off the bat, of course, I believe that Deshaun Watson, over the course of all of these allegations, he comes off looking like a sexual predator. He does. And I believe, personally, that a sexual predator like Deshaun Watson should have gotten more than 6 games. Okay? My gut tells me 6 games is not enough for the breadth of what he is alleged to have done. That said, I am not a lawyer. I do not know the legal precedents. I do not know the legal verbiage. I do not know all of the things that Judge Robinson knows. And for what it's worth, Michael McCann, who is a lawyer, he understands all this stuff. He was on ESPN, and he actually said that he agreed with Judge Robinson's ruling of 6 games.
So when I read her opinion, I was a little surprised that it was only 6, but then I saw her logic. It was pretty thoughtful. She went through and said, look, in the past, the NFL hasn't used greater than 6 games for somebody who is being suspended for the first time. She also talked about how the NFL has defined terms. And those terms, the NFL, she argued, the league is trying to sort of reimagine to fit Watson's situation. And I think her sort of overall thesis made a lot of sense, which is the NFL is trying to sort of create a new policy on the fly that hasn't been collectively bargained, that isn't written anywhere.
So my gut says more than 6 games would have been necessary. Like if Trevor Bauer can get 2 years from Major League Baseball, then Deshaun Watson getting 6 games feels light. But the lawyer ruled 6. Michael McCann, another lawyer, backed her on it. So there's that. Do with that what you wish. Beyond that, though, beyond what Watson should have gotten or what we think he should have gotten, beyond all that, the NFL comes off looking really bad, I believe, in the eyes of the players. The NFL, the players, and the league office, they gave the power to the independent judge, in this case, Sue Robinson. The NFL ceded control of disciplinary action to an independent third party. They did this to satisfy the players. They did this to take league bias out of it. They did this to make the process more fair for the players. And now, in the very first case that the independent judge has ruled on, the NFL and Roger Goodell are coming out and trying to undermine the process. That, to me, is a horrific look from the NFL. Yes, it very well may be a horrific look for Deshaun Watson to only get 6 games. I get it. That comes off poorly too. But from the league's perspective, it is a really bad look to have a process, to build a process, to put a process in place and then implement that process. And then the first time that process is implemented, to try to undermine it and cut it down at the knees. It is a total undermining of the disciplinary process. You did this for a reason. You did this to make things more fair for the players. I don't believe you can cut it out from the knees on case 1. It looks like to the players who you bargained this with that you don't trust the process and it doesn't endear yourselves as a league office to the players anymore. I just believe the NFL comes off looking really bad by creating a process and then not trusting it to work on day one. I believe the NFL comes off looking really bad in this whole thing. They created this, they gave the judge the power, and now they are instantly trying to override it and take it away. That is not a good look for the NFL's standpoint. So then when you dig deeper, the question is, the NFL looks bad. The NFL probably knows that it looks bad. So why did the NFL do this? Why is the NFL appealing? Why is the NFL running the risk of looking bad to the players? Why is the NFL running the risk of looking bad to me and me doing the segment I just did? There's one word: money. There is one word: money. That is why the NFL is doing this. And that is one thing that bothers me. Look, I'm not naive. I'm naive in some things, but I'm not naive in everything. I know that money makes the world go round. I know money is the motivation for most things in life. And I'm not defending Deshaun Watson in any way. But the NFL made this rule. It agreed to this rule. It should abide by its rule. It should abide by its ruling. And the only reason that it's not is sickeningly because of the money. Do not get this twisted. The NFL does not care about women's rights in this regard. The NFL does not care about Deshaun Watson's alleged victims in this regard. The NFL does not care about the alleged transgressions of Deshaun Watson in this regard. The NFL cares about its appearance, and by extension of that appearance, its money. That is it. Don't overthink it, because there's nothing else to think about. There is nothing else. This whole thing is about money. The NFL is undermining its own process because it is worried about its bottom dollar, and that bothers me. If you want to fight for right and wrong and truthfully do it, then I would be all for it. Right? If you want to fight for right and wrong and stand up for the alleged victims, I would be all for you going after Deshaun Watson for a year plus. I would. But this isn't about any of that. This is about money. This is about people on social media got really, really mad at the NFL and said, how could you do this? How could you let him play? And now the NFL is trying to figure out how, man, everyone's mad. We got to keep up appearances here. We can't have these people boycott the league. That's what this is about. And that bothers me. If this had been a drug case or a PED case, I'm sure the NFL would have stuck with the ruling. But because they got a lot of blowback that could affect their bottom line, well, now that's when they get involved. The NFL doesn't care about women's rights. The NFL cares about female fans and their dollars. The NFL cares about female fans allowing their sons to watch or their daughters to watch football so that they can create fans for the future and they can get their dollars. They can't risk alienating advertisers who are upset. That is why this is being done. Okay? The NFL is not appealing to correct a wrong. The NFL is undermining its own process to protect its bottom dollar. Harry Douglas is a longtime former NFL wide receiver, played with the Falcons most notably. He was on ESPN this morning.
I think they're trying to save face right now, Max. I'm just going to be honest about it. I don't think the NFL truly cares about women when it involves sexual assault or things of that nature, because we look at the history of the NFL and the way they've handled things. A lot of people may say, hey, you know what? This is a stepping stone for them to change things and make things different. I need to see that on a consistent basis. I don't need to just see one incident that they try to change things, but then things go back to being the same as it was previously.
The NFL does not care about women. Diana Rossini, the NFL saw the backlash and decided to protect its bottom dollar. That's all this is. I think Deshaun Watson deserves more than 6 games, but this is the process that Roger Goodell and company brought in. In my opinion, they should stick with it rather than cut it out for the sake of money. Diana Rossini was on ESPN this morning.
The league is holding the players to really high standards, and they want to continue to grow the female audience. It's an important part of their business model. It's really important, and this isn't good.
That's what this is about.
The league is holding the players to really high standards, and they want to continue to grow the female audience. It's an important part of their business model. It's really important.
So the NFL wants to grow the female audience. The NFL doesn't want public backlash. So now the NFL is stepping in and trying to correct a wrong, not because they want to correct a wrong, not because they want to fix society, because they want to look good, look strong, and keep their bottom dollars going. And that bothers me. When things are only done because of money, that I understand a lot of things are only done because of money, but when it is and it's so apparent that that's the case, it really bothers me. Texter on the Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line, isn't Roger Goodell just doing the bidding of his 31 other bosses other than Cleveland's owners? Yeah, because they all want money, right? Like the NFL owners are trying to protect the league's reputation and protect the league's bottom line. So yes, Roger Goodell is doing this because everybody wants to keep making money. We got to keep the advertisers happy, keep the female fans happy, keep the male fans who are advocates for women happy, and keep people thinking that the league is doing the right thing. That is what this is about. All right, let's move on to some football news that's actually fun. We're about 10 minutes away from talking more about Jackie Bradley Jr. and talking more about the Red Sox, but I do want to get to this. You know what? Oh, we got to get to who's saying what. It's fun football, but it's who's saying what.
Whoa. What did he say?
Mac Jones? Good Lord. Mel Kiper's got to slow down on this. Mac Jones ain't going to work, folks. It's not going to work. He's got to come to terms with it. It's not going to work.
They really said that?
Every damn thing is politics and race, and I'm losing my mind over it.
It's time for Who's Saying What on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Who's Saying What is brought to you by Vermont Laser Wash. That's Central Vermont's home of unlimited car washes beginning at just $20 a month. So unlimited car washes, $20 a month. If you want one free car wash, just text the word Vermont to the number 30, followed by 400. So 30 and then 400. Again, fun, actual football news here, not the Deshaun Watson stuff. I have my Patriots player that I have decided is my preseason darling. Okay. When the Patriots take the field 1 week from today against the Giants, I know which Patriots player I am going to be fixated on. It's going to be wide receiver Trey Nixon, a guy we talked a lot about during minicamp, a guy that made some noise at camp. Bill Belichick has spoken about how well he's doing in year 2. He was a 7th-round pick last year of the Pats, I think out of Central Florida. So we've heard about Nixon before. Last year, practice squad guy. Belichick has talked about him. Mac Jones has talked about him. He's gaining some traction at camp. I heard him speak yesterday after practice to our guy Phil Perry of NBC Sports Boston.
I would say using your quickness. Guys like Devontae Parker, Nelson, bigger guys, they go up and get it. That's their skill set. For a guy like me, I got to start being more quick twitch. Change the tempo up a little bit, go slow to fast, fast to slow. And I feel like that's kind of when I watch film on older guys like, Welker, Edelman, Amendola, that's where they thrive at, man. You know what I'm saying? Just those tempo their routes, going fast and quick. So that's something I'm trying to implement in my game as well.
I'm all in on being interested in this kid when preseason game starts. I love a self-aware person. I love a self-aware player. And Trey Nixon there is very, very self-aware. He says, look, those guys can go up and get the ball. I can't. So he knows who he is. He knows what he needs to work on. He's a guy who likes to play in the slot. I need to work on being quick twitch. I need to work on getting in and out of breaks, varying up my timings. I'm watching film on the guys who have done it here better than everybody. I love a hard worker. I'm a sucker for a self-aware player. And so every year, we get a preseason darling. This year, mine is going to be Trey Nixon. He sounds really professional, committed to his craft, and I'm looking forward to seeing it all play out on the field. Trey Nixon is going to be my preseason darling. Now, look, remember a couple of years ago, right? Like it was Austin Carr was our preseason darling. Austin Carr caught a couple of touchdowns, I think, in the preseason, didn't make the team, got cut, ended up going to the Saints. Then it was Jacoby Myers. Well, Jacoby Myers is a preseason darling, and he makes the team and pretty quickly makes an impact, right? Didn't make a huge impact with Tom Brady, but with Cam and with Mac last year, he made a huge impact. So I don't know which way this is going to go for Trey Nixon, but he's the guy that I'm most interested in watching. That's not a rookie. We're always going to be interested in watching the rookies, right? Last year, we watched Ramondre Stevenson. And the year before, we wanted to see Kyle Duggar. Like, they didn't even play preseason games, but Kyle Duggar was the rookie that we wanted to watch. Like, it's just, did they play preseasons in the COVID year? Yeah, I guess they would have actually, but maybe they didn't play as many. I'd have to go back and look at that. But we're always interested in watching the rookies. Trey Nixon's not a rookie. He's a guy that I really want to watch. And it's going to be fascinating because Trey Nixon is getting some good reports out of Patriots camp. The Pats have what we think are 5 established wide receivers that need to be impact guys, right? Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar, Tyquan Thornton. That's 5 receivers. If you're Bill Belichick, do you take a 6th one in Trey Nixon? And can he contribute? Does Nixon only get on does he make the team for special teams and then branch into being a wideout? Does he beat out Thornton and Thornton gets banished to special teams? Does Trey Nixon play so good in the preseason that the team finds Nelson Aguilar expendable and trades him to the Dallas Cowboys or a team that needs a wideout, right? We're already seeing injuries. Denver loses Tim Patrick for the year to a torn ACL. Washington for Dallas is out for a long time now. Does Trey Nixon play so well that Nelson Aguilar is deemed expendable and the Patriots ship him out of town? I don't know. But I know that when the Patriots take the field against the Giants a week from tonight, he's going to be a guy that I'm watching. I can't believe that we're already at the preseason. We have a football game tonight, people. We've got Jags and Raiders. Now, neither quarterback's going to play. Carr and Lawrence are not going to play, but it is still football. I will watch a couple of snaps just to say that I did it. Okay? Just to say that I did it. But Patriots are going to be playing 1 week from tonight against the New York Giants. Trey Nixon, he is my preseason darling. We see preseason darlings for every team. Every team's got them, right? Sometimes they become Victor Cruz and they become stars, and sometimes they become Austin Carr, who doesn't make the team. But everybody's got him, and Trey Nixon is going to be mine. It is the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, WDEVradio.com. Interesting text on the Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line. We will answer that when we come back. And Jackie Bradley Jr. released out of the Boston Red Sox organization. There's a lot of questions now and a lot of tentacles to this story. We'll unpack all of them. That's next right here on DEV.
Marvin windows are designed for unprecedented performance and exceptional aesthetics. Marvin's expansive window portfolio has every style you can imagine, all of them crafted with the highest quality material and the ability to mix and match across product lines that allows you to achieve the right form and function for your residential, commercial, and replacement needs. See our Marvin specialist at Sticks and Stuff and Swanton Lumber in Middlesex, St. Albans, Enosburg, Swanton, and Derby, or online at sticksandstuff.com.
Need an appliance? Shop the new appliance truckload event at Lowe's, going on now. From refrigerators and ranges to dishwashers and laundry pairs, we have a large selection of appliances from the brands you trust. Plus, get store-wide savings by shopping other in-stock categories. Go to your local Lowe's store or visit Lowe's.com to shop the appliance truckload event and find what you need now. While supplies last, valid through 8/17.
Have you ever noticed that when the afternoon light hits your floors, you can see everything, including dust?
So much dust.
And that floor dust gets kicked up into the air, compromising the quality of air you and your family breathe.
Eesh.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper is the fast and easy way to clean your floors with ultra-thick pads that trap and lock dust before it gets in the air. Just a couple minutes a day.
And dust is gone.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper. Proud partner of the American Lung Association.
As Vermonters, we know that so much depends on the weather. When you need a reliable local weather forecast, it's literally at your fingertips with the WDEV weather phone. Locally dial 244-1172 or toll free at 1-800-585-1211. Roger Hill's weather forecast is just a phone call away on the WDEV weather phone, 244-1172 or 1-800-585-1211.
The thought of my sons growing up without me inspired me to quit smoking.
I talked to my doctors, and then I threw away all my cigarettes, ashtrays, and lighters.
I started exercising instead of smoking.
Staying away from alcohol when I was first quitting was key.
I kept on trying, learned something each time.
Do whatever it takes.
No matter how many times it takes.
We did it, so can you.
For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC.
I'm David Zuckerman, and I'm asking for your vote for Lieutenant Governor. Are you tired of the status quo? I am supported by Bernie, every labor union, community organizers, and every environmental group. I have a long track record of standing up for everyday people, our soil, air, and water, and for increasing wages, affordable housing, universal health care, cannabis reform, climate action, and so much more. If you want bold, proven leadership, and I hope you'll vote for me, David Zuckerman, in the August 9th Democratic primary.
Paid for by Zuckerman for Vermont, Orly Munsing Treasurer.
Make your opinion heard by texting onto the Brady Farkas Show at 802-585-3026.
This is former NFL wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson, and now we're back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV Radio and WDEVradio.com.
Welcome back in. Brady Farkas Show right here on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. Red Sox baseball comes up 7:10 pregame, 8:10 first pitch. Nick Pivetta on the mound in Kansas City, the first of four. Chris Bubich is pitching in this one for the Royals. The Royals are massively depleted after the trade deadline. We'll talk more about that here in about 15 to 20 minutes or so. But the news of the day for the Red Sox is a whole lot of roster movement. Eric Hosmer is up now, or is activated now after being traded for at the deadline. So Hosmer's in. He'll play first tonight. Darwinson Hernandez, remember the lefty who throws pretty hard but had pretty big control issues the last couple of years. He is back. And Matt Barnes is back as well. 60-day injured list for Barnes. Remember, we haven't seen him since May because he was so bad at the beginning of the year. We'll see what happens for him. Can he be the impact righty that the Red Sox need? I don't know. We'll see, but Matt Barnes is back. Brian Bayo's out. He goes to the injured list after yesterday's, leaving the game yesterday with a groin issue. Caleb Ort sent to AAA, and Jackie Bradley Jr. released. JBJ, parts of 9 seasons with the Red Sox, released. I saw an interesting text from Phil in Berlin. So how great is it that Jackie Bradley Jr. got to end his career at Fenway in a Sox uniform? I don't think Jackie Bradley Jr.'s career is over by any stretch. His Red Sox career is over, but I don't think Jackie Bradley Jr.'s career is over I don't think it's over at all. I got 5 questions after this Jackie Bradley Jr. roster decision was made today. So we're going to get to those now. 802-585-3026. Jackie Bradley Jr. released. Question number 1 for me. Does this mean that Kike Hernandez is close to coming back? We haven't seen Kike Hernandez since the beginning of June. He's been out with that hip issue. I know he worked out today. He's going to Boston College to work out tomorrow and take some swings. Does this mean that Kike Hernandez is close to coming back? Because right now, without Jackie Bradley Jr., the team is rolling with Tommy Pham, Alex Verdugo, and Jarren Duran. Is Kike coming back to take Duran's spot on the roster? Is he coming back just to take Duran's spot in the starting lineup? Or are we just, I don't know what's going to happen, but this team misses Kike Hernandez. Now, he hasn't hit much this year, but they miss his feistiness. They miss his attitude. They miss his defensive ability. He's a very good defensive outfielder. Duran is not a very good defensive outfielder. I would hope that Jackie Bradley Jr. is not released without some idea that Kike Hernandez is close. So that's question 1. Is Kike Hernandez close to coming back? Number 2, kind of question and observation. I promise you, I like being right, but I don't take solace in being right here. I told you at the beginning of the year that Jackie Bradley Jr. should not be a starter for this team. The minute Jackie Bradley Jr. was acquired, it was in December. It was like December 4th or something, right? The lockout happened like December 5th. The Jackie Bradley Jr. trade happened at like 11:59 right before the lockout. I told you since that day, since the next day's show, I told you that Jackie Bradley Jr. should not be a starter for this team. He should have always been a 4th outfielder. I was proven right. I don't like to be proven right in this regard because it comes at the expense of a guy's career, but I was proven right. Jackie Bradley Jr. never should have been a starter. He played in 91 games. He didn't start them all. Red Sox have played 106 games. Jackie Bradley Jr. has played in 91 of them. That is far too much. He started far too much. He started far too long. I always knew that was going to be a problem, and I was right. He should have been a defensive replacement. He should have been a fourth outfielder, a spot starter. He should have been a pinch runner. He has a role on a good team. That role is not playing 91 games out of 106. I had Jackie Bradley Jr.'s former teammates tweeting at me before the year, "You're wrong on JBJ, man. He's going to hit 25 homers and come back." Seriously, I had his former teammates in South Carolina angry tweeting me, calling me a schmuck. I was proven right on this. Jackie Bradley Jr. has a role on a good team. The role that he is best suited for at this point is not the role the Red Sox used him in. That was a problem. And I've got to say, and I've been consistent on this, as much as I've liked Chaim Bloom, having Jackie Bradley Jr. as a starting outfielder for most of the season, this is one of Chaim Bloom's greatest failures. This is one of Chaim Bloom's greatest failures. The fact that Jackie Bradley Jr. was given the spot to start so many games and that he was put in that position when he is not good enough to do that, that is a mistake from Chaim Bloom. Jackie Bradley Jr. is hitting .210 this year. He hit 129 away from Fenway Park, I believe, that I read. I knew it wouldn't work out. It's a failure by Chaim Bloom that it was allowed to get to this point. I wanted the Red Sox to sign Saya Suzuki in the offseason out of Japan. I advocated for him. I advocated for Michael Conforto before he got injured as a free agent. I even thought it was possible that Trevor Story could get signed and could play center field. There were a lot of other things on my bingo card for the Red Sox outfield other than Jackie Bradley Jr. playing this much. I'm not mad. I'm really not mad that the Red Sox traded Hunter Renfroe. I thought the Red Sox sold, they sold high on him. They got a couple of prospects for him. I was fine with that deal, and I was fine bringing back Jackie Bradley Jr. in general. I was not fine with him being a starting outfielder. If if that deal had been made and Suzuki had been signed, then I think we'd all be looking at this and we'd all be looking at Chaim completely different. If Saya Suzuki was playing in the outfield every day and JBJ was the fourth outfielder, I think we'd be looking at everything a whole lot differently. Text, Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line. I hope my Reds take a chance on Jackie Bradley Jr. That's what the Reds do now. They rehab struggling veterans. We will get to that momentarily. We will get to where JBJ is going to go coming here in a minute. So question one was, does it mean Kike's coming back? Question two was kind of an observation about me being right and Chaim being wrong. Three, I think the Red Sox made the right move in this case, sticking with Jarren Duran. Because that's really what this came down to, right? We can keep JBJ and send Duran down to AAA, or we can keep Duran in the big leagues and release JBJ outright. I think the Red Sox made the right move. Chaim Bloom has he's always talked about doing what is best for the organization long term. And he's always said that you cannot lose sight of that. Well, having Duran up on the big club is a better long-term thing than keeping Jackie Bradley Jr. around. You have to get the answer on Duran. You have to get an answer on some of your young players here. Is Jarren Duran the guy for you next year coming out of spring training, or do we need to acquire a center fielder? I mean, is Jarren Duran good enough to be trade-worthy this offseason? You will gain these answers at the big league level. Having Jackie Bradley Jr. does nothing for you long-term. Is JBJ better than Duran in the short term? Maybe for the rest of this year. He might be. But Chaim Bloom has always said it is about long-term, it is about sustainability, and we cannot lose sight of that. And if that is true, then Jarren Duran is the guy who's more valuable to this roster. Can he show us something in the next 2 months that leads us to believe he is our guy for next year? Can he show us enough and show the rest of the league enough that they will covet him in the offseason? Or does Jarren Duran stink And now he's a fourth outfielder, and we have to go and get somebody different in the offseason. I mean, Duran is not having a great year either, right? Like, he started off good. He's hitting 182 in his last 104 plate appearances. I mean, so he's been bad here for the last 30 games or so. Is Jarren Duran next year my fourth outfielder, and he's just a pinch runner? We got to get the answer on this. If it's about the long-term sustainability of the franchise, we've got to get the answer on Duran. I think they made the right move in keeping him. Question number 4 that I wonder. How does the Red Sox clubhouse feel about Jackie Bradley Jr. being released? Keeping Duran is better long-term, no doubt. But in the short term, if JBJ is better, these players are not thinking long-term. These players are thinking about today. These players are thinking about their chance to get to the playoffs. So if that is what they are thinking, how do they feel about seeing yet another veteran let go? They were not happy when Christian Vasquez got traded. Do they feel the same way about JBJ being gone? Do they see JBJ as more valuable than Duran right now? Again, Duran hitting 182 in his last 104 plate appearances, not playing a good center field. Do teammates look around and say, wow, Vasquez is gone, and now Bradley's gone, and all for what? So we can keep this kid who's hitting 182? JBJ is a well-liked and well-respected veteran. How exactly do his teammates feel? For what it's worth, so I'm asking the question, are they as upset about JBJ as they were about Vasquez? Buster Olney told us last hour he doesn't think so.
I think it's going to land fine in the clubhouse because the fact is Jackie hasn't hit. You know, I mean, it's a competitive business, and the fact is he's just not close to what he was offensively in 2018.
That's true. But Jarren Duran's hitting, again, 182 over basically the last 30 games with no power and a 221 on-base percentage. Do the veterans look and say, we'd rather have the guy that's been there for our playoff push than the kid who hasn't and the kid who's doing nothing? I do think it's a fair question to ask. And I think Lou Merloni of WEEI in Boston, I think he put out on Twitter that he also was wondering how the clubhouse felt. They were that shook up about Vasquez. Are they shaken up about Bradley as well? Number 5, the question kind of all of us are getting at here. What happens next for Jackie Bradley Jr.? Phil in Berlin thinks his career is over. Peter wants him to go to the struggling Reds. Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to end up somewhere. And frankly, I think Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to end up with a contender. And I think he is going to end up with a contender who can put him in the role that he's supposed to be in. Veteran leader, pinch runner, fourth outfielder, plays good defense, plays late game defense. I think Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to end up with a chance to play for a World Series. I just don't know where exactly it's going to be. I mean, look, the Phillies were interested in Bradley before the deadline. They went and got Brandon Marsh, so I wouldn't think that they're in. But look, JBJ is not good enough to start for a contending team, but he can play defense in innings 7 through 9. You saw the Yankees make a move for a defensive replacement. Good teams need that role filled. Does he end up with the Houston Astros? Does he end up with my Mariners? Does he end up with the Dodgers? Does he end up with the Braves? Does he end up with a team that can use his speed and his defensive ability late in games to try to win you a World Series? I don't think Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to play for the Reds. I don't think he's going to play for the Pirates. I think that Jackie Bradley, like those teams that are so awful, they now have young players that they want to move on to. Right? They got young guys that they want to give innings to. They don't need to give JBJ a starting role. Could Jackie Bradley end up with the Padres to go play defense there? Could he end up with the Braves? Could he end up back with the Brewers? Could he end up with the Cardinals? The Cardinals just traded Harrison Bader, their defensive guy, for Jordan Montgomery. Could they go for Jackie Bradley Jr.? I think Jackie Bradley ends up with a good team in the role he should have always been in. Spot starter, defensive replacement, pinch runner, veteran leader, playoff experience. When all is said and done, I think Jackie Bradley Jr. ends up, could he go play for the Blue Jays? Like, I think he ends up in a better spot ultimately than the Red Sox do. I would be shocked if JBJ ends up, just rotting in Colorado for the rest of the year or playing with the Rangers. Could he play for the Twins who need a Byron Buxton replaced? Like, Byron Buxton is always hurt. Could he go and be the guy who plays center field so Buxton can solely DH all the time? I think there are options for Jackie Bradley that are going to end up pretty good for him. Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line. No one has explained why Vasquez was the problem. No one has explained why Vasquez was traded. Excuse me. He was not the problem. No one is saying that Christian Vasquez was the problem. Here is how it has been explained to me, and here is how I have read it. The Red Sox were willing to sell. The Red Sox set very high asking prices, pretty much unrealistic asking prices on a lot of their guys. Unrealistic asking prices on Evaldi, Martinez, even too high on Rich Hill. Vasquez, they got a package they actually liked. So the Red Sox were willing to sell, but they were not going to sell low. They got 2 bat-first prospects from the Astros. They liked that. They were willing to sell Vasquez. They think that they can fill the defensive role with Plawecki and with Reese McGuire. And offensively, now with Pham and Hosmer, they feel like they have replaced the offense. That is what I think they think. They were willing to sell. The asking prices were too high. The Vasquez deal they actually liked. And they think they've done enough now offensively to replace him. I think the Red Sox took 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. I think they're largely the same team they were before the deadline, and I don't think that is good enough to get to the playoffs. I don't think the Sox, with their strength of schedule and how difficult it is, I don't think that they're going to head to the playoffs. But that is the rationale. No one said Vasquez was a problem. It is just that they actually got a deal that met their parameters. It's the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. When we come back, we'll get you ready for Red Sox and Royals. We will take you through the Sox lineups for tonight. And everybody is so giddy about what just happened in Houston. Stop being so giddy. I'll tell you why next.
People who call QC Kinetics are pretty much fed up with joint pain.
It's to the point where it's affecting their quality of life. Maybe they can't pick up their grandchildren anymore, or golf, or play tennis, or walk with their friends.
Dr. Justin Garzone, medical director at QC Kinetics, the nation's leader in regenerative medicine, giving lasting joint pain relief with no drugs, no steroids, and no surgery.
The great thing about our therapies, there isn't any downtime. There's no side effects, so patients can get our treatment and continue on with their day-to-day life.
And Dr. Garzone speaks from experience. He had excruciating back pain and got relief at a QC Kinetics clinic.
Over a very short period of time, the pain went away completely, and I've had absolutely no symptoms or pain since my treatment.
Call QC Kinetics now for your free consultation.
Call QC Kinetics, 802-PAINLESS. That's 802-PAINLESS. QC Kinetics, 802-PAINLESS. That's 802-PAINLESS. Treatments are not yet FDA approved.
Were you exposed to hazardous materials while serving in the military and have an illness or condition as a result?
If so, you may be eligible for VA benefits and services. Whether you need health care or want to file a disability compensation claim related to military exposures, VA is here to help. Visit va.gov/military-exposures to learn more and apply today.
You served your country. Now let VA serve you.
This week on RVER, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
Hey, Chief, we got a damaged RV on its way to the OR.
Well, that sounds like a job for the new head of RV surgery.
Wait, are you promoting me?
Congrats, Martinez.
That RV's flatlining.
Well, that sounds like a job for the new head of nursing.
So you're just promoting everyone now?
Yeah, kind of looks that way, doesn't it?
When your RV really needs saving, Progressive has you covered. See if you could save with a leader in RV insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, covered subject to policy terms.
How well does your garden grow? Tune in Saturdays at 12:30 for In the Garden with Peter Burke. Peter and co-host Joel Nashman give you one full hour of the latest news, helpful tips, and your calls to talk about what's happening in your garden. It's brought to you in part by Bees Flowers and Garden Shop. Flowers, hanging baskets, potting supplies, and more in Waitsfield. In the Garden with Peter Burke. Live Saturdays at 12:30. Hear the podcast anytime at WDEVradio.com. How well does your garden grow? Tune in Saturdays at 12:30 for In the Garden with Peter Burke. Peter and co-host Joel Nashman give you one full hour of the latest news, helpful tips, and your calls to talk about what's happening in your garden. It's brought to you in part by Guy's Farm and Yard. If it eats and grows, Guys can feed it. GuysFarmandYard.com. In the Garden with Peter Burke. Live Saturdays at 12:30. Hear the podcast anytime at WDEVradio.com. Want Brady to hear your opinion on the sports stories of the day? Text in at 802-585-3026.
Now it's back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
Welcome back in, Brady Farkas Show, right here on WDEV AM and FM and WDEVradio.com. Red Sox baseball coming up 20 minutes from now, 7:10 pregame show, 8:10 with the first pitch. We'll give you the lineups here in a couple of minutes. Sox taking on the Royals, 4 games at Kauffman Stadium. Make no mistake, the Red Sox have to clean up in this series. The Red Sox, you can accept nothing less than winning 3 of 4 or getting a sweep and winning 4 of 4. If you truly want to be a playoff team and you're a fan that thinks this team has a chance and your ownership that thinks they have a chance and you're a player that believes you have a chance, this series needs to be a 3 of 4 win or a sweep. You cannot split, and heaven forbid you cannot lose this series. If you're serious about making the playoffs, you have to dominate here. The Kansas City Royals are 23 games under 500. And more so than that, they have traded away their all-star in Andrew Benintendi. They have traded away their usual all-star in Whit Merrifield. They traded away Carlos Santana earlier in the year to Seattle. So the Royals are without the guys who should be 3 of their best 4 bats coming into the season. Okay, the Royals are they're bad. They were bad, and they are even worse than they should have been. Get rid of Merrifield, get rid of Santana, get rid of Benintendi. You are left with Bobby Witt Jr. and a whole lot of slop. If you are the Red Sox, you need to clean up and you need to feast in this series. You cannot let down after what happened against Houston. It was a productive series against the Astros. You cannot let down. You cannot go into the heat in Kansas City and get tired and get listless. You need to put your foot on the pedal, and you need to just go, and you need to churn through the Royals for an entire weekend. 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4. Those are the only acceptable answers. And, I mention it being a productive series in Houston, and it was, obviously, right? Red Sox won 2 of 3. They beat the first place Astros 2 out of 3. They won the season series against the Astros. I saw a lot of people saying, it's okay, the Red Sox lost. They took 2 or 3 from the Astros, so it's okay, they're allowed to lose. I'm sorry. To me, you can't be thinking that way. I saw far too many people just writing off yesterday's loss. If you are serious about this team being a playoff team, you have to do extraordinary things. If you have a chance to sweep the Astros on their field, you've got to go for it. I saw so many people yesterday like, the Red Sox can just punt this game. They've already won the series. In April, yes. In August, when you're 3 games out, no. So, yeah, the Red Sox it was productive, this series, but they had a chance to go for a sweep, and they didn't get it, and they needed it. You look around yesterday, what happened? Seattle won, you lost a game. Tampa won, you lost a game. Cleveland won, you lost a game. The White Sox won, you lost a game. Everyone's telling me it was okay to punt yesterday because you'd already won the series. Well, you lost games to 4 teams in front of you. Oh, and by the way, I think Baltimore won, so 5 teams in front of you. 5 teams in front of you, you lost ground on. You can punt series finales in April. You can punt when you are the Yankees played the Mariners yesterday. Yankees had a chance to win the series. They're so far ahead, they could punt it. Right? They sat Aaron Judge. If they are trailing if they're fighting for their playoff life like the Mariners are, they're not sitting Aaron Judge. You can punt things when you are in a position to punt or it's early in the season. The Red Sox are not in that position. So everyone who was just okay with the Red Sox losing yesterday, I am not. Like, if you're going to come back here and pass all the teams you have to pass, then you got to do some extraordinary things. Going for the sweep yesterday, I wanted to see them go for it. Instead, we got Yolmer Sanchez playing. I need the Red Sox to win 3 out of 4 or go for the sweep here. If the Red Sox win the first 2 games in this series, you cannot punt on Saturday. If they win the first 3, you can't punt on Sunday. You are going to need to do some special things in order to get back here. And I hope everybody realizes that. You cannot punt games. Kyle in South Burlington. Brady, do you remember Dan Duquette as a general manager with the Red Sox? 94 to 02. He traded for Pedro and signed Manny, but his failure to communicate was his downfall. Is Bloom Duquette 2.0? Interesting question. I admittedly don't have my Dan Duquette downfall on the forefront of my mind, right? Like, I wasn't here. I wasn't a Red Sox fan. I have spoken to Dan Duquette before and interviewed him, and ironically enough, I'm actually trying to get him on this show again soon. So I would love to ask Dan Duquette, that kind of question. But I'd have to do a little more research on my own. It's not fair for me to say. We will be talking tomorrow about Chaim Bloom's alleged inability to communicate or unwillingness to communicate. We will be talking about that tomorrow. You can bet your bottom dollar. Red Sox through 106 games are a crispy 53-53. The Royals are 41-64. Nick Pivetta is on the mound for your Sox, 8-8 with a 4.47. Chris Bubich for Kansas City, the lefty, 2-6 with a 5.45. Jalen Davis is leading off for the Red Sox in right. So I mentioned Sox outfield. They keep Jalen Davis also over Jackie Bradley Jr. Jalen Davis in right, Tommy Pham in left, Rafael Devers at third, Xander Bogaerts at short, JD Martinez the DH. Eric Hosmer makes his debut, and he does it in Kansas City where they love him, and he won a World Series. He's at first. Christian Arroyo is at second, Kevin Plawecki is the catcher, and Jarren Duran is in the lineup, but all the way at the bottom, he bats ninth and plays center field. As for the Royals, again, they are very, very depleted. MJ Melendez, he's in left field hitting .225. Bobby Witt Jr. came into the year as the top prospect in all of baseball. He's hitting .255 with 15 homers. He's got 20 stolen bases. Salvador Perez is the catcher. He bats third. Vinny Pasquantino, a power-hitting DH, is hitting cleanup. Hunter Dozier is at first. He's got some power. Michael Massey is at second. Michael A. Taylor, the speedy outfielder, is in center. Nate Eaton is in right, and Nicky Lopez, another speedster, is a light-hitting shortstop, and he bats ninth. We will step aside. We will get you the long national news update. That will do it for us. Red Sox baseball comes up at 7:10. Thanks to Buster Olney. Go download the podcast, everybody, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify, and we will see you tomorrow for another full show, 5:30 until 7, right here on WDEV.
Are you sick and tired of that constant pain in your knees or hips or back?